Hey everyone, Dark Magician of Team Sorcerers here, and welcome to another What If episode, which is hopefully quieter in the background. Yeah, again, I'm filming these back to back, but it's another Robot Wars one, and one that I thought about, and it's about Robot Wars, the 7th Wars, and as you can tell from the title, it is called What If Hypno Razer, Dominator 2, S3, Wild Thing, or Chaos 2, that was dust not spit, entered Series 7. I wasn't going to include Chaos 2 at first, and I know Chaos 2 did retire after Series 2 of the All-Stars, but I just wonder what would have happened if Chaos 2 did come back for one more series, which would have been hard to do because George Francis was working on the technical team throughout Series 7, but what if he wasn't and he brought Chaos 2 back for one last hurrah? Well, we'll get to that, and do these one at a time, starting with Hypnodisc, my favourite one. Just to set up the scenario, if either of these entered, it would mean they would be seeded and Ming Dynasty would not be seeded. So either of these robots would take Ming Dynasty's place, and Ming would either not enter or take Zorro's place, since they were made by the same team. So that's the setup for it. Otherwise, the events of Series 7 will play out as much as possible in the same way as the original timeline. And just a reminder of who the seeds were in the 7th Wars. It was 1 Tornado, 2 Firestorm 5, 3 Terahertz, 4 Bigger Brother, 5 Danton Kier, 6 Spawn Again, 7 13 Black, 8 Panic Attack, 9 Pussycat, 10 Behemoth, 11 Exterminator, 12 Bulldog Breed, 13 Smidsy, 14 Thermidor 2, 15 Ming Dynasty, 16 Storm 2. So regardless, Storm 2 in either of these timelines will still be seeded 16th because it's the new blood champion, and depending on where these other robots would be seeded, certain ones will move down. So let's say just Hypnodisc came back. That would mean Hypnodisc would be seeded 6th, and then Spawn Again and all the others up to Thermidor would drop down at 1 rank. So hopefully that will make sense. So yeah, so to start off, like I said, all of them will replace Ming Dynasty. I need to remember all the opponents Ming had. I know it was Scraptosaur, Ceros and Metalis, if I remember correctly. Hold on. And yeah, it was Metalis. Now, we would have to try and figure out what version of Hypnodisc would be used, because I'd like to think the Rose family would probably go back to the Series 4 and 5 version if they could, because it was just superior in every way, whereas the Series 6 version just seemed weaker and a bit slower, less manoeuvrable, and that disc didn't seem as destructive, whereas the Series 4 and 5 disc was. So, yeah, let's assume that that's the way they went. So, honestly, in this fight, Hypnodisc and Seros are the strongest robots. I mean, Metalis just seemed a bit fragile, would get easily ripped apart. Scraptosaur would have some gashes on the side. Same with Seros, but Seros would probably get a chance to flip Scraptosaur over. And based on how the flipper works, it doesn't look like it can self-right, but in any case, Hypnodisc and Seros are the strongest robots, and they both go through. Oh yeah, and obviously I should point out that the heats would be in different orders as well, which is fine because the semi-finalists were all mixed up at the point of the Series 7 semi-finals. So then Hypnodisc would then go up against St. Aggro, and Hypnodisc would just trash St. Aggro, which is a shame because St. Aggro did perform a lot better than it did in the 6-4s, but with the wheels exposed, Hypnodisc just breaks them apart and just leaves St. Aggro a sitting duck. So St. Aggro is dead in the water. Other than that, the other battles play out the same way. Hypnodisc and Seros meet again in the heat final. Seros puts up a decent fight, but Hypnodisc just keeps attacking Seros from all sides. I'm not sure what Seros is actually made of, but I feel like Hypnodisc would still do significant damage, and either Seros would be immobilised, or it would go to a judge's decision, and Hypnodisc would go through to the semi-finals, and would be in semi-final A, along with Tornado, Raging Nightmare, Dantumkia, Gravity Exterminator, Bulldog Breed, and Tough as Nails. So Hypnodisc would then go up against a number 12 seed in this timeline, Exterminator, while all the other battles happen and play out the same way. Although Exterminator had greatly improved, it's no match for Hypnodisc. Hypnodisc is too quick, too manoeuvrable, whereas Exterminator is a bit slow and not so manoeuvrable. Maybe Exterminator could get one strike in, but it's unlikely because Hypnodisc would just keep coming at Exterminator, dodging the disc, and just ripping the sides. Yeah, it's a pretty easy win for Hypnodisc. Also, keep in mind, of course, one thing I should mention is that this is all my best guess, like with all my What If episodes. In case of Robot Wars, I'm not a roboteer, nor am I an engineer, so yeah, I don't know everything about this sort of subject, so but again, it's just best guess, so don't flame me, educate me if I'm wrong about anything, don't belittle me. So, in the next round, not Exterminator, Hypnodisc will face Bulldog Breed. This is the third time in a row that they fought each other, like in all three main series. And unfortunately, things play out pretty much the same way as the other fights. Bulldog Breed tries some different tactics and a different approach, but Hypnodisc again just damages Bulldog Breed significantly. Maybe not externally, but internally it could happen. With the drives be as close to the sides this time, because that was what did Bulldog breed in the other fights. But yeah, history just repeats itself here, and Hypnodisc is through to the grand final for a 4th time, and would be the only robot in Robot Wars history to reach the grand final 4 times. Meanwhile, the other semi-final plays out the same way. So Hypnodisc joins Tornado, Storm 2 and Typhoon 2 instead of Exterminator. So yeah, Tornado would still get beaten by Storm 2, which would also mean that Typhoon 2 and Hypnodisc get paired against each other. Now at this point, it's tricky to say who'd win between them. Now, I know Typhoon 2 is made of titanium, or at least so I've read, and I can never remember which way Typhoon 2 spins. I need to look at that page again. Okay, so Typhoon 2 is spinning that way, and if Hypnodisc is using the old disc and the old disc motor, it also spins that way, unless they've changed it. So yeah, it's yeah, it's tricky. As in a head-on collision, I feel like they would either bounce off each other, or Hypnodisc would do a significant tear into the bodywork. Actually, no, they wouldn't bounce off each other, because if they were spinning in different directions, then surely they would. I don't know. Again, I'm not an expert in this field, so I wouldn't know for sure. But yeah, it depends on the angle of attack, I guess, and who gets to whom first. I know Hypnodisc is easier to control, but then again, we've had other robots that are pretty easy to control go up against Typhoon 2 and still lose. I guess because it's so close, could go either way. I mean, maybe Typhoon 2 could do a side manoeuvre, attack Hypnodisc from the side and take off a wheel, because even doing just that will leave Hypnodisc dead in the water and at the mercy of Typhoon 2, and then that's the end of Hypnodisc's run, and we'll have to fight for 3rd place again. And it wouldn't get better, because Hypnodisc would go up against Tornado. It'll be a rematch from the 6th floor, and yeah, I don't really fancy Hypnodisc's chances of winning. Tornado easily beat Hypnodisc before, it will just do it again, and once again, Hypnodisc will finish 4th. And then the grand final plays out the same way, with Typhoon 2 winning. However, if Hypnodisc was somehow able to beat Typhoon 2, well, that changes a lot, doesn't it? So maybe there is a chance that the two robots could attack head-on, and Hypnodisc would leave a big tear in the side, which would probably jam up the spinner and leave Typhoon 2 dead in the water, and Hypnodisc would go through to face Storm 2. And I don't even know if a playoff would even happen at this point, depending on how fit to fight Typhoon 2 is. If it's not, then it should be an easy win for Tornado. But if Typhoon 2 is able to fight, well, I don't know. There'd be some debate on whether or not Typhoon 2 could beat Tornado. I mean, I genuinely think Typhoon 2 will have a good chance. Because, well, the way I see it, if it can beat Storm 2, it can beat Tornado. Well, I say that, and there was, of course, a lot of controversy surrounding the result of the fight between Typhoon 2 and Storm 2, which I'm going to try and avoid the subject of, because I know that can cause arguments and debates, and it still happens even to this day. The same with the whole thing with Razer and Tornado, but it's like, come on now, it's been 20 years, get over it. But anyway, the reason why I say Typhoon 2 might have a chance is because Tornado is easier to damage externally than Storm 2 is, and Tornado's running on 7 horsepower, whereas Storm 2 is running on 18 horsepower. But then again, I guess that would make Tornado more controlled, so who knows. I mean, maybe Typhoon 2 could sway it on damage, but despite saying it does have a chance of beating Tornado, I don't know now, thinking about it. Of course, that being said, it doesn't matter, because then Hypnodisc would go up against Storm 2, and yeah, as much as I like Hypnodisc, it has no chance against Storm 2. Like, it would just get shunted around the arena way too much, even get smashed up on the inside. And even if Hypnodisc lasts the whole bout, Storm 2 would win on a judge's decision, much to my dismay, because I really wanted Hypnodisc to win the main series. I guess Hypnodisc's only chance would maybe do what Typhoon did and cause one of the front panels to come off on arena wall impact, and maybe Hypnodisc could sway it on damage, but it's unlikely. So yeah, depending on who wins between Hypnodisc and Typhoon 2, either Typhoon 2 or Storm 2 would win the whole thing. So yeah, that's Hypnodisc. Now let's move on to Razer. And Razer, of course, would be the number 2 seed, and then Firestorm 5 and everyone up to Thermidor would drop in rank. And then the heats would be rearranged in a certain order. So, again, Razer is in there with Seros, Metalis, and Scraptosaur. Yeah, again, I feel like Razer and Seros are the strongest robots in this heat. Yeah, Razer can get a grip on Seros and damage it, but Seros is still one of the stronger robots, and yeah, basically Razer will get crushes with the Piercer on absolutely everyone, but Razer would definitely go through, but I feel like Seros would more likely go through as well. And then Razer will again go up against St. Aggro, and yeah, Razer would just crush St. Aggro easily, leave lots of perforations and go through. Heat final, faces Seros again, and just crushes the hell out of it and goes through to the semi-finals again. And now this gets a bit tricky, because Razer would go up against Exterminator, but that would mean that the number 2 seed and the number 1 seed would be in the same semi-final, which isn't ideal, because they keep the 1st and 2nd seed in separate semi-finals, so Razer and Exterminator would have to go in semi-final B, but then there's that nightmare of who would go in semi-final A instead. Would it be Firestorm and Mute, or would it be Storm 2 and Grim Reaper? That's a tricky one to call. So I'm going to have to go with 2 alternate scenarios here. So let's say Firestorm 5 and Mute are put in this semi-final instead. Semi-final A. So yeah, basically all the first round fights would play out the same way. So Tornado beats Raging Nightmare, Gravity beats Danton Kier, Firestorm beats Mute, Tough as Nails, Bulldog Breed beats Tough as Nails. Then Tornado would beat Gravity, so Firestorm would go up against Bulldog Breed. And although Bulldog Breed has improved a lot, I don't know if it would beat Firestorm 5. I feel like Firestorm 5 is more likely to come out on top and get more flips in, hell, maybe even get Bulldog Breed out the arena. I'm not being biased, I'm just saying that that's what's more likely to happen. So yeah, Firestorm 5 goes through to the grand final, and in this scenario would be the first robot to get 4 grand final places. So semi-final B, Razer I think would beat Exterminator, even though there wouldn't be a lot of places to crush. I mean, awkwardly, Razer's beak would have to be more near the front, but try and avoid the disc. But it should be fine, because if Razer can beat S3, it can beat Exterminator as well, and stay out the way of the disc. So, yeah, whether it goes to a judge's decision or not, Razer goes through. And then it would go up against Storm 2. And there is a little bit of debate whether or not about who would win here. I mean, Storm 2 is more likely to win, but I think Razer would have a chance, because it's still got the low scoop and could get under Storm 2. And I think there would be a chance for Razer to get underneath, get the beak in, and get the beak in the gap where the wheels are. Not maybe damage the wheel, not sure, but definitely get a grip on it. I mean, Storm 2 wouldn't make it easy for Razer, but I think this would happen multiple times, and if Razer is able to, it would grab Storm 2, drag it towards the pit button, and then push it towards the pit and dump it in there. I mean, that's how I feel that fight would go. Of course, again, I could be wrong. Maybe Storm 2 will just push Razer around, but I don't know. I genuinely think Razer would be able to beat Storm 2, but barely. And then, of course, Typhoon 2 destroys Atomic. So, the grand final lineup is almost the same as Series 6, only instead of terahertz we have Typhoon 2. So now who would face whom? I guess Tornado would face Typhoon 2 here, while Razer and Firestorm clash again. Now again, I feel like Typhoon 2 might have a chance of beating Tornado. It's hard to say. I mean, I feel like Tornado is a bit more controlled than Storm 2, so I don't know. I mean, I did think Typhoon 2 would have a good chance of beating Tornado at first, but now I'm not so sure. I don't think Tornado would give Typhoon 2 room to breathe, to be honest. I mean, maybe Typhoon 2 can get lucky and hit them on the sides, but I don't know, it's hard to say. But I would say that a Tornado's more likely to come out on top, which just leaves Razer and Firestorm to do battle again, and at this stage this will be the 4th time they clashed. And at this point I would be rooting for Firestorm, because I wanted Firestorm to win the 7th Wars. Nothing against Razer, I love Razer as well, but Razer had already won near enough everything. So they don't really need another UK title, but I feel Razer is more likely to win in this scenario, unless the Firestorm team figures out another way to resist the claw and get under Razer more easily, but I can't think what that might be. So Firestorm has to play for 3rd place again, and then it would face Typhoon 2, but I feel like Firestorm would be able to quickly come at Typhoon 2 before it spins up, get in underneath and flip it over and get another 3rd place win. It should be simple enough, right? And then the grand final lineup is exactly the same: Razer against Tornado. Now, I believe I did read somewhere that the anti-pit device frame thing had been banned for the 7th Wars, and the spinning blade thing on the front was converted into a vertical blade, which we never got to see, which is a shame. But yeah, honestly, without that frame, Tornado has literally no chance of beating Razer. I mean, maybe they can put something extra on the top to resist the claw, but it's hard to say would really. So in this scenario, Razer comes out on top and reclaims the UK title, and becomes the 2nd robot to win 2 UK championships. But this would be the first time a champion would lose a title and then reclaim it after losing it. Now, of course, if by some miracle Typhoon 2 did beat Tornado, then Typhoon 2 would just destroy Razer in the final. I mean, again, I love Razer, but against Typhoon 2, I don't think it would stand a chance. I think Typhoon 2 would be one of the few robots that could legitimately beat Razer. But And of course in the playoff it would mean that Tornado would face Firestorm, and things would go a similar way, but I feel like Firestorm would have learnt its lesson from last time and not flip Tornado back over after flipping it over again. You know, if the scoop was used, I think it would play out the same way, but Firestorm would get a chance to flip Tornado over and not flip it back over. If it does that, it can push Tornado around more easily, maybe even get it on the sidewall, which would put Firestorm in its favour if it should go to a judge's decision. So that being the case, I think Firestorm would come out on top and finish third again. Now let's go with the other scenario. If Storm 2 and Grim Reaper went into semi-final A, then that would mean Storm 2 would face Bulldog Breed instead and beat Bulldog Breed fairly easily. I think Bulldog Breed would struggle to get underneath Storm 2. So yeah, Storm 2 wins that one. Yeah, in semi-final B, again, Razer would beat Exterminator, Firestorm would beat Mute, Typhoon 2 would beat Thermidor 2, and Atomic would beat M2. But then it'd be a different order. So it's hard to say who would face whom, because they can't really put Razer and Firestorm up against each other at this stage, because they're the highest ranked seeds in that semi-final. So I don't know who'd fight whom. So if Razer faces Typhoon 2 and Firestorm faces Atomic, I feel like Typhoon 2 would beat Razer, and I'd say Firestorm. I don't know who'd win between Firestorm and Atomic. It's difficult to say. Although I don't think it would get to a point where Atomic would be able to push Firestorm to the side and flip it out the arena. I think Firestorm would be fast enough to escape that. And I think somehow in a battle of the flippers, Firestorm would win. And Firestorm would. So at this point, the grand final lineup would be almost the same. Only Firestorm 5 would be there instead of Exterminator. But the lineup would be different. I think. Because in the grand final they like to put a winner from one semi-final against another winner from a different one, I feel like what would happen here is Tornado would face Typhoon 2 and Storm 2 would fight Firestorm 5, that fight would play out the same way. Tornado would probably beat Typhoon 2, then we go to the playoff, Firestorm beats Typhoon 2, like I said before, and then, well, and then with Storm 2 and Tornado, that fight plays out the exact same way as in the real timeline, in which case Storm 2 would be the champion of Series 7. But let's say Razer fights Atomic and Firestorm 5 fights Typhoon 2. Again, Firestorm flips Typhoon 2 over, just like that, especially when it gets a bit slow to spin up. And I feel like Razer would more likely beat Atomic, should that matchup ever happen. Like, that era of Robot Wars. So again, we'd have almost the same grand finalists as the 6-4, only we have Storm 2 there instead of Terahertz. And again, I think Tornado would fight Firestorm at that point, and Razer would fight Storm 2. And they'd play out the same way. Firestorm, learning its lesson from before, would flip Tornado over and leave it upside down, win on a judge's decision. Then Razer beats Tornado in the same way as I described earlier, and which would mean that Razer and Firestorm would be the top two, and then Storm 2 and Tornado would be in the playoff, and Storm 2 would beat Tornado, take third place. And as for the grand final between Razer and Firestorm, well, who knows? I feel like Razer would more likely reclaim the title, but it depends whether or not Firestorm has more defences against Razer by this point. So, depending on the matchups, if Razer came back, it would either reclaim its crown or Storm 2 wins. Right, now let's cover Dominator 2. So, if Dominator 2 came back for the 7th Wars, it would have been seeded 4th, and then again, Bigger Brother and everyone below would have dropped in rank except Storm 2. So, again, Dominator 2 is up against Seros, Metalis and Scraptosaur. Yeah, it would be a bit of a hard time for Dominator 2 being up against two flippers, although Dominator 2 can usually beat robots with flippers, even if it's by pure luck. So again, Metalis is the weakest one, and Dominator 2 would just fill it full of holes. I don't know about Scraptosaur and Seros though. It wouldn't be easy to get axe blows in on Scraptosaur. Seros would take a few hits, but again, it would flip Scraptosaur over and just leave it for dead, really. And again, keep in mind, I'm not sure if Scraptosaur can self-right, but yeah, in any case, Dominator 2 and Seros goes through. Then Dominator 2 would go up against St. Aggro. It would put up a decent fight, but yeah, again, Dominator 2 just keeps attacking St. Aggro with the axe, just getting in axe blow after axe blow, and it could end up going to another judge's decision where Dominator 2 wins. I swear, the judges just love the Dominator 2 guys, even though there were 3 times where it did lose on a judge's decision. God, I've lost count of how many judges' decisions Dominator 2 has had. But I know Wild Things had more. Apparently 13 judges' decisions. So in any case, Dominator 2 goes through and faces Seros. Again, I'm not so sure Seros will come out on top here, since Dominator 2 has gone up against robots with superior flippers and won. So, yeah, I feel like Dominator 2 would beat Seros on a judge's decision. So then it would go up against Exterminator, so a matchup we got denied in the 5th Wars because Corkscrew somehow managed to win against Exterminator back then. But now who'd come out on top? I think Exterminator would have a good chance here. I mean, sure, Dominator 2 can get some axe blows in on top, but Exterminator can get Dominator 2 at some good angles and hit it with the disc, maybe even send Dominator 2 over, maybe. Although it would be hard to do considering Exterminator's disc isn't as big as Matilda's. But yeah, it also depends whether or not Exterminator's disc can damage Dominator 2, because it's safe to assume it would use the same titanium as in the 6th Wars, the same grade as what nuclear submarines use. But it should be able to. I'm pretty sure 13 Black did a bit of damage to Dominator 2, even though it wasn't obvious. I don't know, it might be hard for Dominator 2 to get some axe blows in. I don't know if it would do significant damage. I actually feel like Exterminator would probably beat Dominator 2 on a judge's decision here, and by that point the rest of the 7th War plays out the exact same way as it did in the original timeline. But even if Dominator 2 did somehow beat Exterminator, I don't think it would beat Bulldog Breed, and that would go the same way as the fight with Cat 3. Bulldog Breed would beat Dominator 2 on a judge's decision and go through to the grand final, only to get trashed by Typhoon 2, and then whether or not it's fit to fight against Tornado would beat Bulldog Breed. Now let's talk about S3. So, I know it was mentioned that in the 6th Wars that the team would bring in a new robot. Now, I don't know if it would be a similar design to S3, or whether it would be something different, but I don't know. Let's say there's a scenario where like this new robot isn't ready and they gave S3 another chance. So again, they're in the exact same heat. S3 just demolishes well, everyone really. I mean, I feel like Seros would still survive. It's still one of the strongest robots in there. So yeah, Scraptosaur and Metalis have no chance. S3 would also destroy Saint Aggro, maybe even inflict more damage than Hypnodisc would have done, like I described earlier. And Seros would then struggle against S3 as well, and S3 goes through to the semi-finals yet again. Against Exterminator, I don't know, I think S3 is more likely to win. Maybe Exterminator could get a couple of blows in, but S3 is more likely to inflict more damage, so S3 would go through, then it would face Bulldog Breed. I think Bulldog Breed would struggle a little bit against S3 as well, yeah, I mean, Bigger Brother and S3 and Firestorm 4 have easily beaten S3 before, but Bulldog Breed, I don't know. Yeah, I just think it would struggle and get demolished in the same way that it did by Exterminator. So, with that being the case, S3 would finally make it through to the grand final. and then go up against Typhoon 2. I don't think S3 would have a chance to strike Typhoon 2. Typhoon 2, I think, would damage the wheels, just damage S3 at every possible angle you could think of. Maybe even damage the disc. And depending on how fit S3 is to fight Tornado, I don't think S3 would stand a chance against Tornado anyway. Tornado would just easily shove S3 around the arena, even into the clutches of Matilda or Killalot, and still finish third. Now let's talk about Wild Thing. I don't know whether or not the Addams family would go back to the previous version of Wild Thing, but if they stuck with the Series 6 version, I think what would happen is they'd give Wild Thing a better spinning disc, something thicker, more destructive, which would help it out a bit more. And it would probably do good against Metalis, but I'm not so sure about Scraptosaur and Ceros in this situation. That being said, I actually think what could happen is Wild Thing would get flipped on its side. I mean, it is argued that Wild Thing would be too unpredictable here, but I'm not so sure they'd get lucky here. Yeah, I actually think, despite the improvements, Scraptosaur or Ceros would be able to flip Wild Thing on its side, and just leave it there, really, depending on how big the disc is. And I know you could argue this sounds like lazy rising, but I genuinely think that Ceros or Scraptosaur would do that and leave it for dead, in which case the rest of the series plays out the same way. But even if Wild Thing did get through, I don't know if it would even get to the series semi-finals this time. I feel like either Ceros or St. Aggro would get through, only to get destroyed by Exterminator. And last but by no means least, Chaos 2. Now, like I said, I know Chaos 2 was retired by this point, and there is a chance that had George Francis entered, it would have brought in a Chaos 3. Let me know what you think a Chaos 3 would be like, but again, just to wrap things up in this episode, let's see what would have happened if Chaos 2 came back for one last hurrah. Again, like, they're put in that same fight, and I don't think Scraptosaur or Metalis would have had a chance, nor would have St. Aggro. I think all of these robots would have been sent flying out the arena. Same with Ceros, assuming, of course, George Francis would have fixed the problem of Chaos 2 flipping itself over. In any case, I'm pretty sure Chaos 2 would have had a chance of going through to the semi-finals again, and it wouldn't be the same as the Heat C final of Series 6 when it got flipped out by Danton Kier. Oh yeah, I didn't give the others seedings. Sorry. So, like S3 would have been seeded 5 had it returned, and Wild Thing would have been seeded 7. No, 6th. Oh, with all the other robots dropping in ranks. Chaos 2 would be the 8th seed in this scenario. And then Panic Attack would be 9th, Pussycat 10th, Behemoth 11th, Exterminator 12th, Bulldog Greed 13th, Smitty 14th, and Thermidor 2 15th. And yeah, it would be a Chaos 2, I think, would be the first robot to break the 8th seed curse. So yeah, then there'd be a rematch with Exterminator. Exterminator would be gunning for revenge after Chaos 2 beat them in the first ever All-Stars tournament, but unfortunately Chaos 2 would easily flip Exterminator over and just leave it for dead, really. It's not going to make the same mistake Tsunami made, which, by the way, I will cover in a future What If episode. So yeah, with Exterminator flipped over and left for dead, it would then go up against Bulldog Breed, and in a battle of the flippers, ooh, this is a tricky one. As in previous battles of the flippers, Chaos 2 lost out due to running out of gas, which lost him its title against Bigger Brother, and what lost the fight against Danton Kier. So at this point it's hard to say. So it depends whether or not that issue would have been sorted. So let's say it was sorted and they went up against each other. I think Chaos 2 would get in more flips and maybe even flip Bulldog Breed out the arena. It'll come out on top. So Chaos 2 would make it to a 3rd grand final, 4th overall actually, and by that point, actually no, well, it's hard to say, because previously George Francis has had 3 grand final places, one with Robot the Bruce way back in Series 1, and then of course it's 2 tournament winning competitions with Chaos 2. So yeah, he would have been the only roboteer to make the grand final 4 times, that's what I'm trying to say. Unfortunately, Chaos 2 would get pitted against Typhoon 2, and as amazing as Chaos 2 is, I don't think it has any chance of beating Typhoon 2. I think Typhoon 2 would significantly damage Chaos 2 enough to go through and face Storm 2. And it's hard to say whether or not it would be fit to fight Tornado, but even then, I don't think Chaos 2 would beat Tornado here. Yes, it did the first time they met, but if the 2 fights from Robot Wars Extreme were anything to go by, Tornado is more likely to win and finish 3rd. But if Bulldog Breed won, since those flipping over issues weren't sorted, then Bulldog Breed would go through to the grand final, and like I said before, it would get destroyed by Typhoon 2 and shoved around by Tornado. So I guess in either case, Chaos 2 would still go far. It would get to the semi-finals again at least, and be either eliminated before the grand final stage, or it would make the grand final again and finish 4th. So yeah, that is what I believe would happen if either Hypnodisc, Razer, Dominator 2, S3 Wild Thing, or Chaos 2 would have entered Robot Wars the 7th Wars. So yeah, thanks for watching, stay safe, and I'll see you later.